right, today in the Creative Corner, we are here with another guest. Now, I like to talk to my people who do something similar as me. So, Terry Ferguson, welcome to Create and Hustle, where we like to ask creatives how they took their idea, turned it into a business. So, thank you for joining me. How you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you.
That's
Thank
good
you.
to hear. So, I read that you had like a little music podcast. So, give me a little background as to what a Bowl of Soul podcast is and a little bit about the background, how you got started.
Well, a bowl of soul basically is a radio podcast where I give the history of R&B from 1949 to the present. And I give a little bit of the backstory, like on the artists, composers, the arrangers, because I believe in connecting the dots. And a lot of times when people hear like R&B samples, they need to know where that
Where it's
came
coming
from.
from.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And make that connection. But I think it's important, just in general, when you're learning about music, you should know about the artists. You need to know about the songwriters and what gave them the idea or the impetus to create the song or arrangement that they made.
That they made.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I think that's important too, because a lot of times the artist gets all the credit and then the people
Yeah.
behind the scenes don't get as much credit. So I think that's really cool as to what you're doing. We're in the Creative Corner with Terry Ferguson of the Ebola Soul podcast. One thing I want to ask you is in the podcasting space, there's lots of things that you could have talked about. Why music and why that niche of, music, doing the music background that you're doing? Why did you select that?
Well, I selected R&B because R&B still is the main driver for music. It has been for over 60, going on 70 years. Now, this is not to discredit rock and roll,
Yeah.
but R&B is still the moneymaker, okay?
Okay.
From the beginning to now. And people still like they gravitate towards R&B music. And I feel like people try to like put R&B in the cemetery, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not there.
It has managed it. There's many variations on R&B. You have neo soul, hip hop also comes out of R&B because
Variation.
we had to use R&B and jazz samples. So there's a lot of spin-offs from R&B that still keeps going today. So I definitely wanted to talk about that because for so long people try to discredit it, but yet and still when you listen to music, when you listen on TV, when you listen anywhere, you hear R&B all the time. So I definitely wanted to do it from a Black history perspective because I really don't feel we do know enough about our own music
Yeah.
and how it's evolved over the years.
We're in the Creative Corner on Creative Hustle, where we like to ask creators how they took their idea and turned to a business. As you know, you can only hear this on ESPN Richmond 106.1. And Terry, the question I have for you is about names. Like I always tell everybody, especially the hosts that I coach and all that, I tell them everything starts with a name, including us. Like we're born and the first thing we get is a name. So how did
That's
you come
right.
up with a bowl of soul?
The way I came up with it, it was I thought about it. When you look and you listen to music, it's a mixture of everything. R&B is a mixture of blues, it's a mixture of gospel, it's a mixture of jazz, it's a
Yeah.
mixture of hip hop, it's a mixture of African music. So you have to bring all that stuff together. It's like a soup.
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with a bowl of soul.
It makes me think of with like the chicken noodle for the soul, those books like that. When I first read it, that's exactly what I thought about. So I thought that was a real cool name. Now, when we
Mhm.
first got on the call, you said that it's also a radio station. Tell us a little bit about that entity and what you're doing with that.
Well, originally, when I had started a bowl of soul, I started it as a radio station. I was using Live 365 as the platform.
Yeah, I remember them
Okay.
days.
And Live 365 really was a leader in internet radio before a
Yeah.
lot of other different companies came about. But then Live 365 went through a change where they had to shut the business down and then come back, but smaller. Okay. But I used Live 365 because I said, well, it was an opportunity for me to put my concept out there. Because, if I was to start a regular radio station, that would cost a lot of money. So internet radio basically was cheaper for me to do, to bring my concept to life, and then also to put music in the system where I know the artists will get credit for their music.
That makes sense. That makes sense. How long have you been doing the show?
I've been doing the show since 2009.
Okay.
And
Okay.
again, it started with Live 365, but then I started veering off and realizing podcasting was becoming the new thing.
Yeah.
And podcasting is still generally young.
Yes, it is.
Okay. It's a young concept still. But with Live 365, I was able to go live. I could talk. I could do my own type of program. So I decided to take that concept and shift it over to a podcast as well.
That makes sense. And you said you've been doing this since 2009.
Mhm.
I always say to people around 2014 is like the real start of the internet. Because if you really
Yeah.
try to Google stuff like before
Mhm.
that, you're not really able to
No.
find it. So what was the transition like from doing, because I remember Live 365. I remember
Yeah.
internet radio.
Yes.
And I remember that was the thing to do before podcasting. And
That's
I
right.
started early in podcasting before Black people got on trend, because I've been doing this since 2012.
Okay.
So,
Good. You're
I
a veteran too.
understand. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that. So what was the transition like for that? And was it always like, was there a break? Like, maybe I don't want to do this no more. And then maybe a resurgence? Like, tell me about that.
I think it started out as a hobby. What I did was, I always liked radio broadcasting. Okay. Ever since a kid, because a lot of my influences, you grew up in New York, you heard 98.7 Kiss, you
Yes.
heard
Yeah.
WBLS.
Yeah.
A lot of my DJs that I like, and I'm still old enough to remember WWRL. We heard these stations, and I always would listen to like WNJR in Newark, New Jersey.
Newark. Yeah.
And yeah, Newark, right. And I always like listening to the DJs. I like their delivery.
Yeah.
One of my favorite idols was Frankie Crocker. Okay,
Okay.
because he knew how to bring the heat. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? He would bring all kinds of music to you, and you're like, damn, where did that come from? I never knew who Bob Marley was until I listened to Frankie Crocker. I didn't know who Blondie was until I listened to Frankie Crocker.
Yeah.
So he broke a lot of records on his station. And for me, it was like very important to me. So what I did was, a friend of mine who lived in Hunts Point, there's a community radio station called WPNT, and he was doing his own radio program there. So I decided to go there and try it for myself. So I did a 1-hour show. I did R&B music, and then I also would do the news. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how it evolved for me, and me merging into the internet space. But what I did notice is that podcasting was a new thing. And I read a lot about it, and I wanted to get in that space. And I realized that I was hopping onto something that now everybody and their mama wants to make a podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. We're on ESPN Richmond 106.1 on Create and Hustle, where we like to ask creators how they took their ideas, turned into a business. So one of my last questions is for you, like, what's next in the evolution of podcasting? I mean, you did internet radio. It's now, turning into podcasting. Podcasting has now went from just being mostly audio to now everyone is forced to do, feel like they're forced to do video content with their podcast now. So like for you, A Bowl of Soul, like what's the evolution of podcasting? What do you see, the ultimate ending be, or the ultimate goal, I should say, for that?
Well, I think what's going to happen is, it's going to get to the point that podcasting will dominate. It will dominate probably more than radio broadcasting. Because you know why? Because it's a cheaper medium. It's
Yeah.
a cheaper space to get into. And I always said that the internet is the equalizer as far as economically
Yeah.
concerned. Because you know for yourself, if you and I tried to establish a radio station
Mm-hmm.
or some type of medium, it requires a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay,
Licensing, all that.
that's right, licensing and stuff. I'm not saying it doesn't require those things still, but I still feel the point of entry is easier.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
much easier. I really do see that the video interacting with the broadcast will be more prevalent,
Mm-hmm.
and people will still continue to use their devices to listen, because what they're finding based on the Nielsen stats, they're finding that people like listening to podcasts. They
Yeah.
like niche broadcasting, and they want to see the people that's talking behind the scenes. Probably they'll develop more devices for you to be able to interact
Do
as
that. Yeah.
opposed to a car, even though they're developing more and more cars so that you can receive more content. But I just feel that's the future. It's like before we had the transistor radio, you couldn't
Yeah.
see who was talking, right? So
Yeah.
now we got devices now that are like transistor radios, but you can see the person.
So you can see the person.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So what would be the ultimate goal for a bowl of soul? Like, a TV show, like, a mainstream radio, TV show. Like, what would be?
I think for me, I would like to see the radio station grow more.
Okay.
That's the goal. Because what's happening now, people are finding out about it. They're tuning in. I'm actually offering a lineup, just like a regular radio station offers a lineup of shows and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I do want to add more video where people can see not only, hear the podcast, but I also have another show where I interview people and they can
Okay.
see these people. They could be entertainers, they could be business people or whatever. I want them to be able to get access to that content and be educated, because really the goal of what I'm doing is to educate folks and to let them know that we do have mediums out here where people really want to educate folks and keep them aware of what's going on. And maybe they decide they want to start a business. You never know.
Exactly. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better, Terry. I couldn't have said it better. Let the people know where they can find you on social media and what you
Okay.
have coming up next.
All right. Well, you can check out a Bowl of Soul podcast. You can download the podcast at abowlofsoul.com. You can also go listen to the radio station on Live 365. They can go to just type in a bowl of soul, right? You can follow me on Instagram. It's PROFT Love, right? And you can follow me on Twitter at a bowl of soul. And I also have a Facebook page, a bowl of soul, a mixed stew of soul music as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, folks, you heard it first here, right here on Create and Hustle, where we like to ask creators, how did you take your idea, turn to a business? So, Terry, thank you for joining me, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.